So I'm with EPA's Office of Sustainable Communities, and what we work on is green building and smart growth. So before I get started, I want to make one thing clear, which is that we are not regulatory. We help the willing. We provide tools and resources to communities, but we have no regulatory power. And I also want to make sure that we're all on the same page about what smart growth means. So when I talk about smart growth, I'm talking about compact, walkable communities with a mix of uses, a range of housing options for people at all different incomes and all different stages of life, and transportation options. I think that we need to add to that definition to be climate ready or resilient also. And so we, along with the rest of EPA, are starting to think about how to mainstream climate adaptation into all of our work. These are just some informal guidelines for how my office is thinking about this. You know, everyone knows no regrets, low regret strategies are a great way to go. Things that communities need to do anyway, like updating your zoning or building codes. And along with that, it are actions that bring multiple benefits so that you can get more out of every dollar that you spend, and ideally benefits in the short term as well as the long-term benefits. And also, a lot of these strategies can help you both reduce greenhouse gases while also reducing your vulnerability to climate change. And as I said, we're just trying to mainstream it into everything, but of course we're focusing on land use, transportation, and buildings. So some of the smart growth strategies that can be just tweaked a little bit to help communities be more resilient, sort of the foundation of growth is thinking about where it makes sense to grow and where it doesn't make sense to grow. And the way you need to look at it now, of course, is how is that going to change into the future? Once you figure that out, you can figure out how to direct development away from the areas that are in harm's way either now or that will be. But you can also start thinking about what you do with the development that's already in these areas. And once you've identified those safer areas, that's where you can encourage smart growth, mixed use, compact development. And we've been talking about behavior change. It's hard to change behavior. It's easier when you have a physical framework, a physical landscape that makes that kind of behavior easier. And there's research that shows that walkable communities with a mix of uses encourage a cohesive sense of community. So that's part of that social resilience that we've been talking about. And of course, water and energy efficiency, which as sustainability people you all are familiar with, and giving particular attention to the people who are most vulnerable to, yet least able to adapt to the effects of climate change, so children, the elderly, low income. I want to mention a few tools from other parts of EPA outside my office. I think probably everyone is familiar with Energy Star. There's some great tools there to help you save energy, use energy more efficiently. WaterSense is similar, but for water-efficient fixtures. Climate-ready water utilities and climate-ready estuaries have tools specific to those sectors, but I've been told that they're also useful for communities. So some of the things that my office is working on that combine smart growth, green building, and climate resilience. We are wrapping up a technical assistance project with the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments in the DC area that will provide a sort of guidebook for jurisdictions in the area with different strategies that they can take that will bring those short-term and long-term benefits, help them reach their housing, transportation, energy efficiency goals, and also prepare them for climate change. And we looked at the transportation, land use, water, and building sectors, and looked at categories of directing development away from vulnerable areas, protecting people and assets in vulnerable areas, and then encouraging sustainable growth in safer areas. And the other thing that we're working on is we have two publications already that provide what we call essential fixes, which are specific changes communities can make to their land use codes to achieve different goals, like more walkable communities. And those lay out a menu of options, everything from minor tweaks to a complete overhaul of your code so that communities can figure out which option works best for them and the political will and capacity that they have in their community. So this publication will be the same thing, but looking at climate adaptation specifically and what changes can you make to your land use and building codes that will get you the climate benefits, but then you could bring these up in a zoning code update, and you would never have to say the word climate change or resilience or anything like that, because they'll bring these other goals too. My office does a lot of technical assistance. I'll just quickly mention a few disaster recovery and resilience ones that we've been doing. We worked with 6 towns in Iowa after the 2009 floods and tornadoes to help them find ways to rebuild more resiliently. Things like incorporating green infrastructure and finding safer places to put affordable housing. We're working right now with FEMA on 2 pilots in North Carolina to develop a tool that can help communities better understand how to incorporate future risk and vulnerability into their land use and infrastructure planning. And we're hoping to have the final reports from those 2 communities in fall of this year. In Wilmington, we were looking at understanding the future risk to water and sewer infrastructure and identifying approaches the city and the utility could use to protect the existing infrastructure. In New Bern, we're looking at an individual neighborhood and trying to figure out how to use green infrastructure strategies to help reduce daily and localized flooding. And finally, in Vermont, another project that's ongoing right now, we're working with the state to coordinate recovery across several of the Mad River Valley towns and helping the state agencies review their programs and structures to improve floodplain management and plan for more responsible growth. So unfortunately, none of our technical assistance programs are open for application right now. We're hoping to have another round of them, but it's out of our control. It's just up to our budget. So we have the Building Blocks for Sustainable Communities program, which I know a lot of you in this room are representing communities that have gotten this assistance. We have a menu of tools. Communities request a specific tool. We go in a one-day site visit and deliver that tool, train them how to use it. Once we've delivered it to a certain number of communities, we figure out what the issues are, we refine it, and then we'll turn it into a workbook that we'll put on our website. Any community can access it and hopefully just pick it up and use it themselves. The one that we have done so far is a walkability audit. We have a few more in the pipeline for this year. We also have our Smart Growth Implementation Assistance Program, which is our more in-depth technical assistance. This is the Vermont and the Washcog projects fell under that. These are projects that help the individual community, but that are also meant to help us understand some of the more complex cutting-edge problems that are out there and what the solutions are, and then turn those into resources that other communities can use. So if I had been thinking strategically when I put this together, I would have included the cover of the project that Jonathan Rose helped us with. But as it is, we have probably about 30 of these reports, but some that might be of interest is we have one from Sussex County, Delaware on green infrastructure strategies for different types of streets and parking lots. One that we did with the state of California on it's basically a guidebook of 10 different community typologies and different strategies that are appropriate for each of these types to reach smart growth goals and reduce greenhouse gas emissions, along with specific ways to measure their progress. And our other major program is Greening America's Capitals, which is open only to capital cities. This is to help in a demonstration project in the city, help them figure out how to use green infrastructure and green building techniques. And the idea behind this is to help the individual city, but also to have it in a visible place so that state legislators will see it and hopefully will want to bring these ideas to their community or work it into state law. So in all of these assistance programs, we provide options that the community can consider, but it's up to the community to decide what, if anything, they want to implement and to do all the heavy lifting. We're just purely here to provide the tools. One thing that is open for applications is our National Award for Smart Growth Achievement. I would urge all of you from cities to think about whether you have any projects that might be eligible. Those of you who aren't from cities, think about great projects that you know of and encourage them to apply. We would love to get some that deal with climate resilience in the application this year. We have a specific question about whether the city considered future climate impacts in part of planning the project. So we'd love to get some projects. There's the categories. The information is on our website. And I just want to end by going through a few of our publications that might be particularly helpful. We have the 2 Getting to Smart Growth publications. There's 100 policies in each one that have been used by communities around the country. We have This is Smart Growth, which is if you need to explain to your community what smart growth is, it shows you what it looks like in rural, suburban, and urban places. The Essential Fixes publications that I mentioned, we have one that's for urban and suburban codes and one that's for rural land use policy. And then there's 2 publications that we've just come out with that I especially want to mention. One of them is Creating Healthy, Sustainable, and Equitable Communities, which we wrote with EPA's Office of Environmental Justice. And it's really bringing together the smart growth, environmental justice, and equitable development communities. And it's got a bunch of strategies for low-income communities, a bunch of case studies. It's a really great document. And then the other one is also came out of one of our SGIA projects. It's infrastructure financing options for transit-oriented development. And this is not how you pay for a train station or a train car, but how you finance the infrastructure around it that makes transit-oriented development possible, like sidewalks, parking, affordable housing, things that it's often hard to find the money for. You can find all this information on our website. I also put out copies of our publications brochure on the literature table out there. Please take some, hand them out to your friends and colleagues and people you run into in Penn Station. You can sign up for our email list. You'll get information about when we have open competitions for technical assistance, when we have new publications, and you can follow us on Twitter at EPA Smart Growth. Thanks.